Alright, so you have a website and you want to make sure that it shows up on Google somehow, but you don't really know how to do that. Well, that's where search engine optimization comes in, also known as SEO. Understanding SEO can sometimes be a little tricky, especially if you're not very computer savvy or, don't know too much about tech, but that's fine because you don't need to know much about tech to understand SEO. Actually, SEO is an extremely simple thing. We just tend to complicate it. So in this video, what I'll be doing is kind of explaining SEO in a way that is very simple and easy to understand. I'm not going to go into anything very complicated or confusing or anything technical at all. It's just the basics of what it is. So hopefully if you have a business or you're launching a product or you have a store that you want to launch online, you can understand what some of the best practices for you to do are. I'm not going to go, again, too deep into exactly how to do those things, but just the overview. Hey, how's it going? My name is Yerain, and in this video I'm going to be talking about SEO. So if you enjoy that kind of content, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button so that other people can get this content as well. With that out of the way, let's get to the video. Alright, so first things first, why is SEO important, right? Like you could get ads, you can get paid ads, and your website can show up all over the internet. But there's a couple of downsides. Obviously, you'd have to pay a bunch of money to do that, where SEO, or showing up organically, is completely free. Not only that, but when you're showing up organically on a search engine results page, the people who are searching for that topic, whatever they search for, those keywords, they're most likely to actually want your service or your product or just be on your website. If you're just serving ads to them, they actually want to be there, as opposed to an ad or they don't necessarily want that. They didn't search for it, but when they're searching for it, they're looking for something, and you might have the answer, and you might have an opportunity to convert someone. It's also extremely important because all of your competitors are going to be doing SEO things. They're going to be wanting to show up higher in the search engine results, and the more keen they are to the best practices, the less likely you are to show up for anything. If they're doing all the best things and you're not doing anything for SEO, then you might have trouble showing up whenever a searcher, like somebody, wants to solve the problem that your product or business solves. You're not going to show up organically. So that's a little bit of why SEO is important. Now, how exactly does SEO work? It's actually extremely complicated, but even for myself, and I've been doing this for some time, because there's a lot of algorithm stuff, there's machine learning, and that's kind of how Google works right now. But again, I'm going to make it very simple. So search engines use something called crawlers, and what crawlers do is they go from link to link to link, discovering new pages. So if your website's homepage has, say, 3 pages in it, then it'll follow those 3 pages, and then if those 3 pages have 3 links in it, or 2 links, then it'll follow those 2 links until it hits a dead end. And that's where it stops discovering new things. Once the crawlers have all that information, once the crawlers identify all those links and how they're structured, where they go, they take that information and bring it back into their index, kind of like their database. It's like a library that holds the records of all the information on every website. Think of it like that. And you want to be indexed. So the first step is, like, how do you get your website indexed, right? How do you make Google find your website? It takes some time if you have a new website, but fortunately, Google sends the crawlers out frequently. At some point, your website will get indexed. You can do things a little, you know what? I'm not going to get into Search Console or anything like that. Again, bird's eye view overview. So that's the basics of how the search engine works in relation to organic search. Very complicated topic, but I had to boil it down to the very most simple and important elements. Your website gets crawled by the robots, crawlers, then the information gets stored in a library of sorts, an index, and then people are able to access it then. And then it starts to rank. So what shows up first is based on many ranking factors. At some point we kind of SEO community settled on like over 200 ranking factors, but the thing is now Google's really using a lot more machine learning, and it's extremely difficult to try to know what a factor is. It kind of just takes like user input and repetition and just starts learning what users want to do. So it's increasingly being harder and harder to crack Google because no one can know what it's thinking, because it's a machine that is consistently learning based on interaction. So ranking and understanding how to rank is can be complicated, but it's not impossible. It's pretty easy once you understand what ultimately Google's goal is, which is to serve the most relevant and accurate information to anyone who's searching for that information. All right, so let's bring it back to the main question. What is SEO? So SEO is search engine optimization. So it's presenting our piece of content or our website or a blog or whatever it is that we have to look as favorable to Google. There's a few other search engines out there, but we're not going to go into that. And also in the United States, Google has a vast majority of the market share, so we tend to just focus on Google. And not to mention that they have so many free software that they give us that we can use, like Google Analytics and Search Console. So we tend to focus mostly on Google, but there are other search engines, especially if you're abroad. The point is that search engine optimization is optimizing the page to show more, to be more favorable for Google. So before I move on, I have to talk a little bit about keywords. So what are keywords? Keywords are the words on your article that you want to match with a search term. When I say article, I mean like anything on your web page that you want to match to a search term that someone searches on Google. So if you're searching for best kitchen knives on Google, and your keyword can be premium kitchen knives, and best kitchen knives is pretty close to premium kitchen knives. It's a little bit of different. Maybe that's not the perfect example, but those are very closely related. And Google's going to be able to take the search term and the keyword and say, okay, this person has, or this article has the term, the keywords premium kitchen knives several times throughout the article. It seems like this is a pretty relevant article to this search term. So we're going to say that this is probably what the user wants. So with that said, some of the optimizations that we can do are making sure that we have that search, making sure that we have those keywords in critical places. One, we want to make sure that it's on the first paragraph of our article. We want to make sure that it's in the URL, preferably. It doesn't have to be, but best practice. You want to make sure that it's in your title. That's a must. If your article doesn't have the keywords in the title of the thing that you want to show up for, you're already lost. The title of the article needs to have the keywords somewhere in it, or else how does the user even know if this is relevant to them? It's common sense, and I think that's what I want to ultimately boil this all down to, because everything I've been saying may sound a little technical, but it is just common sense. Does your content or your article answer the question, serve the user in somehow? Does it help them? Because if it does, then you're going to naturally start ranking for that, so long as there isn't better content competing against yours. So what I mean by that is, look, you could write a really good 5-paragraph article on what the best kitchen knives are, or the best the best phone cases or something like that. But if someone else wrote a 5,000-word review on the best kitchen knives with images, with graphs showing the different types of metal that are used in some kitchen knives, that's clearly a much better article than the 5 paragraphs with no image or something like that. So if you're writing really thin, small content, I mean, think about it again, common sense. Google's going to take the one that satisfies the user's query the best over yours. That's just, again, common sense. So I like to think that we complicate SEO a lot, and we try to come up with flashy things for everything. We content silos and stuff. Content silos is actually common sense in itself, but that's a whole nother topic. And again, getting into the complicated stuff. The point is, SEO is just about common sense. Do you have the most relevant, most accurate article or post or content about that topic for a user when someone searches for that thing? If the answer is yes, then you are doing good in content creation, and that's a good place to start with understanding the basics of SEO. If the answer is no, then you need to figure out how to do that first. Then we can talk about all the other things that we can do on the page. There's a ton of technical SEO things. There's a ton of on-page SEO things. There's a lot of backlink outreach, stuff like that. But if you can understand the basics of creating great content for the user, you're solid. All right, so that's it for me today. If you enjoyed this talk, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up so other people can get this content as well. If you have any questions at all, please just add them in the comment section. I read and reply to every single comment, so I'll be happy to have a discussion with you there. That's all for me. Take care.